Good day. You look reasonably sane. What are you doing in the catacombs? Are you a cleric or something?
Oft-repeated words that you'll hear some variation of in Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and so on. But in this particular video, we will focus on the enigma that is Patches. Who is he? What compels him so? Is he no more than a heartless rogue? Indeed, what is his obsession with launching people down holes? Well, let's start with the first. Patches, known as the Hyena in Demon Souls, Trusty Patches in Dark Souls, Unbreakable Patches in Dark Souls 3, and Patches the Spider in Bloodborne, and Patch the Good Luck in Armored Core. Did I miss any? He's a deceitful grave robber with an unexplained hatred of the clergy, a distinct shaved pate, and equally distinct squat. Every time the player encounters Patches in Dark Souls, he will attempt to trick them in some form or another, usually leading them into a trap with the promise of treasure, in the hopes that the player will die, allowing Patches to loot the body and then sell those items to others or keep them for his own benefit. This in itself shows that Patches is greedy and anticipates most others to be the same. After all, most of those who end up in these Forsaken Lands have probably been led there for either a noble or greedy cause. He expects that nobody will be able to resist the allure of treasure, and unlike grave robbers who steal from the dead, Patches is rather more involved. He'll be the one putting you in the grave before he robs you. That said, Patches rarely engages the player in outright hostility, preferring to avoid combat in most scenarios. So what about his distaste for clerics and their ilk? Outside of Bloodborne, of course, where he rather ironically seems to worship the amygdala. In Demon Souls, he remarks, "Praying has not put food in my mouth, nor anyone else's." And in most of his appearances, he will inquire as to whether or not the player is a cleric. Just what is the origin of this grudge? Unfortunately, we can only speculate as to that.
Wait, have you met Petrus? That self-proclaimed cleric? Believe me on this one, bruv. The man is scum. Don't you be fooled by his claims to do good. They're all the same, those rotten clerics.
Extrapolating what we know of Arena of Karim and Raya of Thorolund, it is possible that perhaps Patches once had, say, a sister who was led off to be a firekeeper or set off on pilgrimage. Then again, Patches will lead Raya into a trap, when you might expect he'd have some sympathy in that aspect if he had once a sister lost in a similar way. But his remark in Demon Souls on food, along with his nature, always implied, to me, that he was a peasant of poor upbringing, struggling to eat and to survive, leading him to such unsavoury means as a grave robbing. It could be any number of things that caused his hatred of clerics, however. He will also offer some choice warnings and thoughts in regards to other characters. He and Lautrec, for example, have a mutual hatred of one another, which is made all the more bizarre by them seeming to share a voice actor.
Oi, have you met Lautrec the Embraced? Believe me on this one, bruv. He's completely mad. Have you heard of Trusty Patches? If ever a man has rubbed me up the wrong way, if he ever comes around again, I swear I'll have his hide.
More interesting is his appearance in Dark Souls 3. Whilst initially he's just up to his usual no-good mischief, we do learn a bit more about him this time. For starters, his Ash, along with his unbreakable moniker, remark on his impressive, if perhaps misguided, willpower. Patches never lost heart and never looked back. He marched in one direction, and that direction was dead ahead. Did you see him passing by? As stubborn as a mule, that Patches. We also learn that he is capable of empathy, or camaraderie to some extent. Patches knows Grey Rat, and it is implied that he was amongst some circle of thieves with him. Back in Demon Souls, it seems very likely that he and Blige used to run together, until Patches trapped him. But if Patches learns that Grey Rat is in danger, it is possible for him to save the unfortunate thief, albeit whilst masquerading as an Onion Knight, a favoured disguise of his in the third game. although you might well argue this is only to repay a debt that he owes. Even so, Dark Souls 3's Ringed City made the mystery of patches all the more bizarre.
Now, I'm off in search of the Purging Monument. Once I find it, everything will come back to me. Who I was, what I lived for, what my name was, and what terrible grudges I held.
Terrible grudges. That is no doubt in reference to his dislike of clerics. But when we find Lap in the Dreadkeep, he's quite the opposite of our usual patches. Lap, incidentally, translates from Swedish as patch. He is heavily armoured and will assist us, leading us to treasure and indeed even procuring treasure for us. Lap is in search of the Purging Monument, believing it will restore his memories, and if led to it by the player, it will do just that, and lead to a very strange encounter. The Purging Monument, by the way, is almost certainly related to the Purging Stone items, and if you need a quick refresher on those, well, they were stones created or found, or in some ways belonging to Arstor, the Earl of Karim, and they reduced the curse, they removed the curse from you, because humans, I quote, are helpless against curses and can only redirect their influence. The Purging Stone does not dispel curses, but receives them as a surrogate. The stone itself was once a person, or some other being. And here you have the Purging Monument, which is like one giant purging stone and has implications rather unsettling to think about. But it is this final encounter with Patches that leads some to speculate that he is some form of god, akin to Loki, the god of mischief and trickery. As to that, I'm not sure I quite subscribe to the theory, but his quotes here are very strange. A fine dark soul to you. What it means, I couldn't tell you, but I can give you my opinion. To me, Patches represents, well, two things in a more meta sense. In one way, he represents a type of player, the opportunistic player, the one who invades and, pushes people down a hole. At the same time, I feel like perhaps Patches is Miyazaki or the developers in general's voice or self-insert, because the developers do seem to enjoy messing with the players, and Patches, well, he is emblematic of that. Considering the Ringed City is the conclusion to Dark Souls, for now, what better way for the creator, the legendary Big M, to bid farewell to us?
Every age, it seems, is tainted by the greed of men. Rubbish to one such as I, devoid of all worldly wants. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way we are. I'll stick you in my prayers. A fine dark soul to you. Yeah, have you met that sunbathing Solaire? Believe me on this one, bruv. He's a complete idiot. But he happens to be an awfully strong idiot. So just nod your head and keep him on your side.